Hello. So, as you probably realize from listening, this is a squier affinity from 2001, and it has some problems, some small issues that we could easily take care of. But I think, as I am going to take this guitar apart anyway, I'm thinking, let's see if we can make it play as well as a really expensive Stratocaster. Something along the lines of maybe a custom shop. Of course, there are limitations to what we can do, but it doesn't mean that we can't have fun with it and that we can't try to make this guitar play better than it's ever played before. But first, we have to take this guitar apart, because there are some problems with the electronics anyway. So I'm going to start by taking off the strings and then taking off all the hardware and then removing the neck from the body. I've taken the strings off, and now I'm going to start taking all the screws out and taking the tremolo off, taking the neck off, taking the tuners off, taking out all the electronics. My goal with this guitar is to show that you can just take something that maybe no one wants any longer, and by just giving it some love and care, we're going to make this play awesome again. So I'm not going to replace anything unless I really have to, because the electronics are a bit weird. So once I get in there, we'll see if I have no other choice than switching something else. But otherwise, I'm not going to do it, because I see a lot of videos of people saying like, oh, this is a great guitar, but you have to change the pickups and you have to change the tuners and you have to do this and that. And the thing is that, yeah, sure, it's a great guitar, but it's only great after you've done a lot of work to it and put a lot of extra money into it. And by that time, you might as well just buy a whole other guitar that already have all the good parts. So I'm just going to take it apart for now, and we'll see when I come back to it if it's absolutely necessary to switch something out, but hopefully not. So here is the tremolo system, and as you can probably see, hopefully, with the camera, as you can probably see, there is a lot of rust and gunk. So we're going to take everything apart to its smallest component, and then we're going to put them all in a bucket together with all the other parts, and then we're going to clean them. But that's for a later date. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. We're going to unscrew the jack and see what's wrong with it. And hopefully it's just a question of cleaning some gunk out. I don't know where this guitar has been before I bought it, but whoever had it didn't really take care of it. Or at least didn't know how to take care of it, which is fine, of course. Not everyone does. It's very easy to let things go. Huh. Here it is. And I can't say that I immediately see something that's wrong with it, but maybe there is. I'm gonna have to take a closer look at it. But first, we're gonna cut these off and just put it in the bin with the rest of the parts that need cleaning. Okay, so now we've removed the screws, so let's take our first look and see what's going on underneath the pickguard. And there we have it. Big pool routing, so if I want humbuckers, I can go for that. Let's take a closer look at the electronics. So here we can see the 3 pickups, and they look like any Squier pickups would look. Nothing unusual there that I didn't think I would see. I know that the pickups work. The problem is somewhere around here. It's most likely the switch, because that's where I feel that things are happening when I'm playing the guitar. And if we look real closely here, we can see that, for instance, the wire here has some weird gunk on it. I don't know if that's very easy to see, but it's right there. But the pots are big and nice, so I think that maybe just cleaning out the switch will help. Will help with the electronics, so we might not have to switch any parts out. The routing for the tremolo system has this weird little extra cut-in and a weird drill mark. I don't really know what that is all about. I've never seen that on a Squier or any other kind of Stratocasters before. So if anyone out there knows if this is just a Affinity 2000 era thing, you know, let me know. I'd like to learn something new. So, and now everything is apart, and we don't need the body anymore because we're going to focus on the neck first. So, we can put this away somewhere safe where we won't get scratched. So, now it's only thing left to do is removing the tuners. So now I'm going to clamp the neck down so I can reshape the back of it. I've made a clamping hole for the neck that doesn't touch the threads. And the only way I've made this is by cutting slots that fits over the threads, so that when I clamp down the neck, the threads don't get damaged. Now, I'm gonna start off by sanding this off, and then I'm slowly gonna remove just a tiny bit of wood, because I don't want to remove too much, because it's almost exactly the way I want the neck to feel. But I'm gonna make it a bit smoother and take some of this gloss off, just to make it feel like an old, well-played instrument. I first sand the entire neck with my machine sander with 180 grit sandpaper. And after I've done that, I start sanding with hand sandpaper, and I go up to 400 grit. So, now I've sanded the neck down up to 400 grit, and it's a perfectly fine place to stop if you want to. The neck is really nice and smooth and feels really comfortable. But I'm gonna go the extra mile and put finish on it and smooth the finish out with 1200 grit sandpaper to get it that extra smooth that just melts your hand into the neck when you play it. Now, to do that, you could use true oil if you want to. It's a perfectly fine finish, and it makes this really, really nice, and I've done that a lot of times. You could also go for Crimson Guitars oil if you want to. It's a really, really nice one. I recommend that too. It's basically the same finish. But what I use, and what I think is the best, is regular old teak oil. This is what I consider the best out of the three. You could also experiment with other things, like shellac and Danish oil, but I haven't really done that yet myself, so I can't recommend it. But so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to just start putting some on with tissue, and then I'm going to use sandpaper, 1200 grit, and push it into the grain of the wood. Now, I'm going to repeat this process like 3 times or something like that. I'm just going to do this until the neck feels tacky, and then I'm going to leave it to dry, and then I'm going to come back and redo it again until I feel like the neck just feels like, I don't know, a baby's bottom or something like that. I don't know. Something smooth and perfect. So one layer at a time, building up a nice, comfortable finish, and then we're going to leave it to dry for maybe something like 2 days, I think, would be enough. As we're waiting for the back of the neck to dry, I'm going to take a razor blade and I'm just going to round over the sides of the fretboard. This will make the neck even more easy to play and more comfortable and just melt even more into your hand. This neck is 20 years old, and so I'm not going to have to do a lot because it's already pretty round over, but I can get it just a little bit extra round over. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So what I do is I hold the neck in place and I just gently, very gently, I just take off maybe something along the line of 1/2 mil. I'm just scraping away. You'll have to feel it with your finger and remove a tiny bit more. Always remove less, because as you probably realize, you can always take off a little bit more, but you can't glue it back on. So I'm just gently removing a tiny bit and feeling it. Okay, so here you can see the round over side and the side that I haven't got to yet. And just by that tiny bit amount of wood taken off, there's a really big difference. Now I'm going to go and do the other side as well. So now that I've rounded over the edges of the fretboard, I'm just going to take a pencil with a little bit of water and I'm just going to put some water on the edges. And this is just a tiny bit of amount of water, and the reason why I do that is because I want to soften up that edge when I later go to sand it, because the reason why these fret ends are soft on an old vintage guitar is not because someone sanded it, it's actually because someone's played the guitar and their fingers and the sweat from them have pulled away the wood. And that's why if you do this sloppy, you won't get a very good result, because you can feel the difference between a tool making it and a hand doing it. So that's why I'm going back and forth and I'm just spreading out some water, because that's going to raise the grain. And I don't worry about this tiny amount of water like destroying the fretboard or anything like that, because we're talking about like just a dip of water basically for the entire neck, and it's drying super quickly and it's just raising the grain where I've cut it. So now it's dried and the grain has raised. You can see it by how it's a lighter colored where I scraped, and the darker color is still in the middle of the fretboard. So now I'm taking some 1200 grit sandpaper, wet and dry, and I'm just going back and forth and I'm smoothing it out. You could take something that is has a little bit more grit to it to begin with if you want to make this go faster, but I really like to make it feel like it's been played in, which is a unique feeling that I don't think you can really get unless you actually try to figure out how something gets played in. So I just go back and forth with wet paper and I just try to knock everything down and make it so as smooth as I possibly can. And this is something that takes a long time, but I think that it's something worth doing. So I'm gonna do that, and we'll be back once I've gone through the entire neck. So now we're back, and all of the sides have been rounded over, and with sandpaper we've smoothed them out. I can't really tell you how this feels, but it feels like soft silk or something. very, very nice and smooth, and it has a very nice round over feel to it, where you basically can't tell where the edge really is any longer, the way you could before. And to me it's very, very close to how an old guitar feels after being played for maybe 40 years or 50 years or something. Okay, the next step is to take masking tape and put it all over the fretboard. So now we've taped off the fretboard, and the reason why we've done that is because it's much easier to just tape it off now and then remove the tape once we're done and the fretboard is clean and neat and we can put some oil on it, instead of having to clean it for, I don't know, an hour to try to get all the metal flakes and tiny dust particles out of it. So I recommend that you tape the fretboard off if you're gonna do something like fixing the frets. I've checked this neck and we don't need to level the frets or anything like that. There are a bit of gunk on them and they are a bit dull, but that's okay. I am going to show you now how I do to make them look like mirrors, which is super nice when you're playing the guitar, to have really nice shiny frets. So that's what's coming up next. Okay, so what I do is that I take some wet and dry paper that is a 1200 grid on it, and I roll it over my finger. You've probably seen a lot of other YouTubers do this. And then I just go back and forth over the neck and smooth everything out. I have this polishing wheel that I bought at the hardware store. It was only a couple of bucks, and you get this polishing paste with it. And all I do is that I smear it on here, and then I start polishing the frets. What I do is that I put it in my drill, and then I just go across, keeping it at an angle. And we'll look at the frets now, and then what they look like once I've polished them. So, after polishing the frets, I hope you can really see how much shinier and nicer they became. They feel, when you touch them, perfect, like running your finger over perfect smooth surface. I don't know what to call it. People say glass, but it's smoother than glass. This is something really simple that you can do to your guitars, even like on a regular basis. Like, all you need is a drill and that wheel, and it's not very expensive, and it lasts for a long time. I've done countless guitars this way, and it doesn't take much time. It's a little bit of elbow grease, and you just have to put some force into it, but otherwise than that, it's really not hard. So I really recommend it, and it makes a big difference on your guitar. Now all I have to do is remove this masking tape and then put some oil on the fretboard. But other than that, we're done with the neck. So next up is the body. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. Bye.